Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would talk about the F-4E Phantom 2. This is one of the Phantoms that's in the American tech tree and ended up spading it last week or so, and I thought we would just go through how it's kind of in a weird spot in Aerialistic, but also can do really well because of that weird spot. So this vehicle is incredibly different when it's stock to when it's spaded, and it has a bit of a problem, and it's not just a problem with this vehicle, it's a problem with a lot of these vehicles around this BR. Even though this vehicle is 11.3 and the top BR is 14.0, its modification costs are basically the same as a 14.0 vehicle. They really need to start reducing the modification costs for these vehicles because it's making them incredibly hard to grind through because, well, you end up playing against a lot of very powerful vehicles, and also you end up grinding out a bunch of vehicles while playing it. So why would you ever play this if you have already played a previous one, ground through it, and then used another plane to be able to research through the next one? With the F-4E Phantom, by grinding it out, I ended up researching two other planes at the same time, which I feel like shows the balance of the research is off. I have always felt like once you finished modifying a plane, you should have unlocked the next one, and then maybe a little bit. But this time, I went full force and it went a bit crazy, which shows that they should definitely reduce the modification costs on a vehicle like this, especially since this vehicle is so dependent on some of its modifications. It is kind of nuts. So at 11.3 with the F-4E, you have the wonderful choice. You either play around your BR, which generally, you're not ever going to really be a dogfighter around this BR, but you are at least going to do okay because you have a lot of different missiles which you can use in a lot of different ways, or you get uptied and you just face better versions of yourself like the F-4S and stuff like the F-4J, which is incredibly annoying because the reason why the F-4E is at 11.3 is it has a crucial weakness compared to a lot of other vehicles, and it's the radar. This is the AN/APQ-120 radar, and it's what your semi-active radar homing missiles, which is the majority of your armament, is controlled by. Basically, this radar misses a very specific piece of the pie, which a lot of kind of meta vehicles have around this BR, and it is the PD mode, the basically way that the pulse Doppler, you're able to kind of hold on to enemies which are coming towards you even close to the ground. Now sometimes with this radar, it just decides to go all crazy and play like a PD radar. I don't know if it has a bug in it or what, but on some maps, especially that one which has like the mysterious valley, I believe it is, where you have like the center which is a bit lower than the sides, sometimes it just decides it's gonna continue to lock vehicles when it really shouldn't, which is a bit weird, so that's quite nice, but it's something you're gonna have to master, which is why when you are at a point where you have the AIM-7E-2s, which are the Dogfight Sparrows and stuff like the AIM-9J, I always say go around about 2,000 to 4,000 meters, look for people who have who are going too high and they're creating the white line behind them, and then go and target those with the AIM-7E-2s, and then what you can do from there is you can go down, use your AIM-9Js, and then secondary after that use the AIM-7E-2s again, which I've found pretty well. But the problem with this vehicle is you have to grind so much RP to be able to get access to the AIM-7E-2s that most of the time you're playing this thing with some pretty bad missiles. So you start off with this vehicle with basically just two AIM-9Es, and that's about it. The AIM-7Es are weird. So let's talk about this. The AIM-7E, if you actually have a look at its stats in-game, and you compare it to the AIM-7E-2 DF, they have exactly the same stats. The stat card is exactly the same, apart from the E2 is slightly lighter. And this is something that I really wish they would add certain other factors to these stat cards. One of these is huge, which makes these two very different, and it's basically the reaction time of the missile. So the AIM-7E-2, when you fire the missile, the amount of time it takes from being launched to tracking the target is incredibly quick. That's why these are dogfight missiles. So it means that when the missile is burning, when, you know, the motor is actually going, it's able to really use its maximum overload really well and hit the target even when it's kind of like moving away from you. The AIM-7E, it takes a very long time for the missile to basically react to its seeker head once you have a radar lock on a vehicle. And that is the huge difference between these two missiles. Now, you shouldn't launch these missiles at anything that is more than 10k away. It's very hard to hit anything with them, but they are pretty good for jousting, if you know how to joust, and also are at high altitudes, or catching people off at the perpendicular, which is usually what I did with these types of missiles. The other thing that they're also really good at, which is, you know, something we talked about before, so you have that initial hit, 2,000 to 4,000 meters, try and deal with the people who are higher. If they have PD radars, which your RWR will tell you, just run. You won't be able to beat them, especially if they know where you are. So just stay away from that idea. And then when you drop down using your AIM-9Js on enemies, what you can actually do is a lot of people, especially in specific vehicles that are pretty good at it, will loop. Right, they'll loop up and down to try and burn energy of other vehicles. F5s do this a lot, stuff like Mirages do this a lot, and even, you know, MiG-23s and sometimes MiG-21s. So the radar is very effective when things are above you and you are looking up into them. So if you have two people who are fighting, who are dogfighting, and they are looping on top of each other, then if you are able to hit the enemy target while it's at the top of its loop, you can keep a great lock. And once again, the AIM-7E-2 DF, as long as you are within, you know, 10, 8, 7 kilometers, it will hammer them. And that is really, really nice. Another little thing to also mention is if a target is near you and you have radar locked them and fired the semi-active, even if they have fired chaff, don't worry, the missile will still track the plane. It won't actually go after the chaff. You just have to make sure not to reset your radar lock. Even if the radar lock is on the chaff, the missile will still go towards the plane. So don't worry about that. That is also something that is across the board the way that this works. So that's why chaff a lot of the time is pretty much worthless unless you are trying at a very long range to break radar lock on specific missiles. So even on this radar, which is not the most powerful, if you are close enough to the enemy and they use chaff and try and turn away, don't worry about it. Just hold the lock and the missile will hit the target, which is just kind of crazy to think about. Now, this vehicle also gets a lot of ground ordnance, which is probably why it's higher BR than it is. And I had a lot of people while grinding this, which were like, "Hey, you just use the ground ordnance, hit the bases, and then, you know, get the mods to be able to be useful." And you know, I kind of agree with this. If I'm honest, after grinding through it, where I was playing this as a fighter first, and I didn't even do any of the ground pounding parts of it. It was rough. Like, it was really bad the first few stages, because you need to grind like 100,000 RP to get just like the AIM-7Es, and then to get like the AIM-7E-2s, you're looking at what, like 150,000, 120,000, and during that time you were just not effective at all, and once again, you are facing things that are better than you. So it just kind of sucks. I get why people bomb bases and stuff like this and the F-4E. At least this thing has countermeasures, so it can keep itself alive. The only vehicles that I struggled against in terms of the countermeasures, though, was stuff with like PL5Bs, because this thing burns hot, right? It has two massive engines, and the PL5Bs would just go straight through the countermeasures, so just watch out for that. But also, Using this thing as kind of like a missile machine, it was actually pretty fun to play it, as long as you got the distances right. Didn't really dogfight too much in this thing in terms of using the gun, only really to finish off targets if the missiles had missed. But I never really got into too many turn fights because, of course, that's not really what this thing's forte is. So even though this was not the easiest grind in the world, because it was very expensive, because also at the same time, you have a few finicky things in terms of the actual weapon systems on it, I had a good time, and I, by the end, actually really enjoyed it. The F-4E Phantom 2, we went 52% win rate, which I think is fair over 61 battles. Basically, it just matters which team you're actually on in terms of who has the premiums or not. We went 141 air kills to 38 deaths. So around about a 3-to-1, which I think is fair in this thing, and also around about just over 2 kills per battle, because, as I said, using the AIM-7E-2s was really nice, and the AIM-9Js as backup was nice too. I wish they were Gs though, which is why I think the Kernas is probably in a better position than this one, because the Gs give you that extra length, and that's what you want to do with this vehicle. You actually want to engage from far away. You don't want to get close to the enemy. Now, one of the things I will say about this vehicle is a lot of those kills and a lot of those stats come from after getting stuff like the AIM-9J and after getting stuff like the AIM-7E-2. This vehicle with just the AIM-7Es and the AIM-9Es is horrifically bad. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if people use the bombs to get the good loadouts. And I wouldn't judge anybody for it either, because as somebody who struggled through it, it's not very fun. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.